Hello, and I want to welcome you to this episode of Answer Me This, where we answer questions that Christians ask. And this one today, hard-hitting. Thousands and thousands have asked this question over the years. Such an important one to our faith. Is Godzilla mentioned in the Bible? Is Godzilla mentioned in the Bible? Okay, well, maybe not hard-hitting, and probably not too many people have asked that question, but you might be surprised to know that kind of, sorta, the answer is yes. But before we get to that, I want to do a would you rather. We did this on the last episode, thought we'd do it again, and so this one seemed really fitting. Would you rather? Would you rather be King Kong or Godzilla? All right, the epic battle between King Kong and Godzilla. Who would you rather be? Would you rather be King Kong or Godzilla? And that was a tough one, trying to think that through. And so I went to ChatGPT. What does ChatGPT say? And very insightful. So let me just read you. This is what ChatGPT says. In a straight-up fight between King Kong and Godzilla, Godzilla has the edge. Now here's some of the attributes of why Godzilla would win. Because he has atomic breath with devastating range. He's nearly indestructible, his hide, his massive size and strength, and he's amphibious and thrives in water. So he can do battle on land or at sea. That's pretty impressive. Now, here's some of the positive qualities of King Kong. He's highly intelligent, right? So be like Godzilla seems kind of dumb, like I'm big and strong, I'm a big bully, right? But he doesn't seem to be that bright, right? But King Kong, he's intelligent, right? It could work to his advantage. He's more agile and fast on land, and he's strong too, but probably not as strong as Godzilla. And so who wins? In most versions, Godzilla wins. Now, this was interesting, though. ChatGPT said, if you love brains and heart, you'll root for King Kong, right? Because why? Because down deep, that big beast, he's got a soft side. We know he has a soft side for, I don't remember her name, the young blonde girl. I mean, he kind of has a thing for her. And so there's a soft spot, right, in him, down deep. But not Godzilla. And this is what it says here. If you want raw power and destruction, then Godzilla is your pick. All right, so how would you answer that? Well, if it's like just what kind of person, monster would you want to be? I would rather be like King Kong. I would rather be, big and strong, but have a soft side to me. Then Godzilla, he's just like, I'm going to kill everything. I'm going to torch everything, So, but if you're talking about in battle, who would you rather be? Hands down, I'm going with Godzilla, all right? Because he can fight on land. He can fight on sea. I mean, that's a secret weapon, right? Is that, well, not so secret, I guess, but is that being able to just breathe out fire? I mean, that's a deal breaker right there. I mean, like King Kong could have him pinned. All you got to do is breathe on him, and he torches him. So there you go. All right, now let's get into it today. Is Godzilla really in the Bible? Well, I would answer it this way. Yes, there is a Godzilla-like creature found in the Bible. Yeah, I don't understand people always saying, oh, I think the Bible's boring. Like, you're crazy. You're boring. Your mom's boring. What are you talking about? Bible's not boring. There's all kinds of incredible stuff in the Bible, and including a Godzilla-like creature. And so I'm going to show you. Book of Job, all right? Job is a book about a man named Job. And, man, this guy is well off, very blessed of the Lord. And then all of a sudden, right, like Satan, that's a whole nother cool conversation where Satan can come into the presence of God and Satan basically, he's just following you because you've blessed his life. And so God allows him for Satan to allow some things to happen to him. And so We see like he loses his business, all destroyed, and then all of his kids die. I mean, just can you even imagine? Like you lose your livelihood, you lose your kids, they all die. The only one you're left with is a wife, and she didn't seem like to be a real prize because her advice to Job was curse God and die. Okay, that's what Book of Job says. So like the one person who's kind of a, grumpo apparently is the one you're left with. And anyway, so these bad things happen to Job, and friends show up, and they're knuckleheads, and they try to give advice, and it's, they give horrible advice. Basically, here's how they try to encourage Job. You know what? You've probably sinned. Like, God is punishing you because you've sinned, right? And like most of Job is like Job saying, no, I haven't. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I haven't sinned. And then talking to God and say, I don't get this. I want to meet with you. I want to face-to-face with you, God. I want to know why you're doing this. It doesn't seem fair that these things are happening as I've tried to live for you. And so really much of the book of Job is this dialogue that Job has with God. And by the way, it's if you're going through pain and suffering in your life, what a great book of the Bible to read. And to go on this journey with Job, as he wrestles with his faith. And by the way, let me just say this. God is not intimidated. God is not even, I would say, if done respectfully, even bothered by us questioning him and laying our doubts before him on why he's allowing certain things to happen in our life, because that's what Job does. And at the end of the book, God calls Job blameless. But he keeps asking to meet with God. So God shows up in a whirlwind. So we get to the end of the book, and God shows up. Okay, in a whirlwind. Now we know God's a spirit being, so he manifests himself in a whirlwind and speaks to Job through that. And here's what's fascinating about this book. Most of the book, Job is asking, why? It's stuff that you and I ask when we go through hard times. Why? Why, God? Why, God? Why, God? Why? So God shows up to answer him, but never once does he answer that question. He never once tells Job why these things have happened to him. But what he does is he reveals himself to Job. He speaks to Job about his character. And that's enough for Job. We'll come back to kind of some lessons for us at the end here. But in the midst of that, when God shows up and describes his power and his might and his sovereignty over the world and over Job's life, one of the ways he does that is to describe in chapter 40 and in chapter 41 two enormous creatures. In chapter 40, God talks about Behemoth, which is essentially a dinosaur. I believe in dinosaurs. I'm young. I believe in young creation. I'm a young creationist, you could say. In other words, I think we have a relatively young Earth when God created the world. And I know there's debate on that. But anyways, so I believe that there were dinosaurs, not like 10 million years ago, but I think like dinosaurs, the time of Job, which was about 4,000 years ago, that there were dinosaurs on the Earth, and of course now extinct. Unless you believe in the Loch Ness Monster, that maybe there are some dinosaurs out there, but that's for another day. All right. But anyways, so I believe that it's and when you look at the description, this is a dinosaur. It's a land dinosaur. And then you get to chapter 31, and he talks about this creature called Leviathan. What's interesting is Leviathan is also mentioned in Psalms and in Isaiah. And so he describes this massive creature. Now, the word Leviathan, the Hebrew word, the Old Testament is written in Hebrew language, literally means coiled one. And so essentially, and I'm going to read a description here from Job, but essentially, Leviathan is a serpentine, fire-breathing sea creature. Come on! How cool is that? A serpentine, fire-breathing sea creature. I'll even add to that. In Psalm 74, verse 14, it says the heads of the Leviathan. So Leviathan actually could have been a two-headed sea monster. I mean, come on. Now, some translations, this is silly, but some Bible translations refer to Leviathan, or like an explanation of it anyways, You know, like sometimes in your Bible, you read something, there's a little star or a number, and you go down and read the note. Like some of them will say this is a crocodile. That's the silliest, most ridiculous thing ever. Because when you read, and we're not going to read, for the sake of time, like all of, chapter 41. But if you go back and you read the whole chapter, you're like, that's not, like, that's just lazy to come up with that conclusion. Like do your homework there. Like, this just on the surface you could tell. That's not describing a crocodile. Anyways, so it is well, here's the other thing. And sometimes people will say, oh, well, it's more a mythical creature. Okay, that doesn't make sense either. So if God is trying to make a point, and here's what I think the point is, that he's making with these creatures is like, hey, Joe, like these mammoth creatures, I'm over them. Like these incredible, huge, scary, animals, I'm over them. Okay, if they were made up, what point would that make? Like, Job, I am over these mythical fake creatures that aren't real. I mean, that doesn't even make sense, right? So to me, it's obvious because the point of what God was doing with Job is that these would need to be like really true creatures. That's like me saying to my son, one time I slayed this dragon, and my son's like, no, because dragons don't exist. So like, what's your point, right? It's like what would be his point? All right. So these are like real creatures. Now, having said that, let's have some fun. Let's read, because God's word is fun. All right. So we're not going to read all of it. I'm going to read parts of it. Okay. So here we go. All right. So this is God talking now, right? As recorded in Scripture to Job. It says, can you draw out Leviathan with a fish hook, or press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many pleas to you? Will he speak to you soft words? In other words, you can't trap him. Like you can't, hook him in. He's not going to plead for mercy. Verse 4, will he make a covenant with you to take him for your servant forever? He's not going to serve you. He's not going to be your pet. Will you play with him as with a bird, or will you put him on a leash for your girls? You never do that, Leviathan. Verse 8, lay your hands on him. Remember the battle. You will not do it again. In other words, if you ever really encountered you would never want to encounter a Leviathan again. Behold, the hope of man is false. He is laid low even at the sight of him. In other words, this creature will humble you as a man. So even though God has given us, dominion over the animal kingdom, 4,000 years ago, you came across a Leviathan, you will be the one that will be humbled at this massive creature. All right. Now we get a little. We're not going to read all of it, but some of the description of this creature. All right. Verse 15. His back is made of rows of shields, shut up closely with a seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They clasp each other and cannot be separated. All right. I mean, this is like scales, like Godzilla. This is my favorite part. Verse 18. His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the dawn. Out of his mouth go flaming torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. Out of his nostrils come forth smoke as from a boiling pot and burning rushes. His breath kindles coils, and a flame comes forth from his mouth. Come on, that is awesome, dude. This is a creature that blows out fire. Are you kidding me? Dragons are real. At least they were real anyways. These are real. It's a real creature. Again, why would he give a made-up animal? It doesn't prove anything. But if this creature, this massive creature that can humble mankind, that you can't tame in any way and can blow fire at you, all right? I mean, like, if God created that animal, right? And he's the only one that can tame it, then, we should probably, submit ourselves and have a fear of the Lord. And it's kind of, I think, some of the point that God is making here. Okay? Goes on and says, let's see, verse 25. When he raises himself up, the mighty are afraid. This is why I don't believe it's a crocodile. A crocodile don't raise himself up. All right? He raises himself up. The mighty are afraid. At the crashing, they are beside themselves. Though the sword reaches him, it does not avail, nor the spear, the dart, or the javelin. He counts iron as straw and bronze as a rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. For him, sling stones are turned to stubble. Clubs are counted as stubble. He laughs at the rattle of javelins. In other words, remember Godzilla, right? Tough interior. Like, yeah, you watch the old movies, right? Old Japanese movies of Godzilla, and they shoot at him. They're like firing stuff out, just bounces off of him. That's what we have here. Right? Like, you try to spear him, you try to javelin, his skin is so tough and so hard that boop, it just bounces right off. This is awesome. Verse 33, 34 ends this way. On earth there is not his like, a creature without fear. He sees everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride. He is this massive creature that sees up on high, and man is humbled before him. That's Godzilla. Before there was Godzilla. Oh, man, this is awesome. What's my point in all of this? All right? What's my point? Well, one, the Bible's just awesome. All right? There's all kinds of cool stuff in there. Well, my ultimate point I want to make is this. Is the sovereignty of God amidst our suffering. This is where Job is at. He is in a deep, deep valley. At one point, questioning if it's worth even going on and living. And God shows up to him in his suffering and in his pain. And God reminds Job of his sovereignty, his power, his might, his presence. This huge Godzilla, right? Like creature, Leviathan, that would scare off any man. God's like, I created that. I give life, I take life. There's nothing you're going through, Job, that I'm not over, and that I don't have the power to intervene in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, you don't know why, and nor am I going to tell you, but just remember who I am. And I want to say this for you and me, because we all go through pain and suffering in our own life. We all have Godzillas, if you will, in our lives, right? Those scary things that happen that come into our lives. But what I think God is ultimately saying here is, God, he can handle any Godzilla that shows up in our life. Any problem, any pain, any hurt, and he will, in his way and in his timing, and maybe even in ways that will reap eternal benefit that may not necessarily here on earth, because eternity is our ultimate home. And so really, we can have fun with this. And it was fun. I think it was fun. I don't know if you had fun. I had fun. But there's a real serious message that no matter what we're going through, whatever Godzillas we're facing in our lives, God is sovereign. He's present and he is powerful. And oh, by the way, he cares. He cares deeply for us. So I hope that while this is fun, I hope it's an encouragement to you, especially if you're going through some pain in your life. There's no event, no thing, no Godzilla that could come into your life or mine that God isn't over. His power and his presence goes with us. Thanks for joining me.